Well, shalom to CPAC. It is great to see all of you here. Wasn't that a great last panel, great last interview? They did a super job. Are you having a good time at CPAC? I am too. It's been great to be here yesterday and today. It's particularly exciting to see so many wonderful young people. Could I hear a round of applause for all the young conservatives that are here? So we've got a couple minutes. You heard the panel introduced. I'm going to share just a minute or two of thoughts, and then I'm going to go right down the line and start, Congressman, with you in a second here. But the panel, you saw the title and maps. More than just maps, I want to say, what's the future of Israel? And I should first say, there has never been an American president who has done more for the state of Israel than Donald J. Trump. Isn't it phenomenal? You know, for years we've heard from both Republican and Democrat leaders about even what should be a simple thing, and that is moving the embassy to the capital of not just any country, but a country that's our #1 ally in the Middle East, one of our greatest allies in the world. You think it wouldn't have been such a big deal, but when you think of all the bureaucrats in the federal government and all the people who said, oh, you can't do this, there's going to be bloodshed, there's going to be problems, Donald Trump said, nonsense, we're going to put it in the place where the Knesset and the Prime Minister are, and he moved the embassy to Jerusalem once and for all. This president and his team has been phenomenal, talking about giving credit to the Golan, and not just this president. Vice President Mike Pence has been phenomenal. Mike Pompeo has been tremendous as Secretary of State. Nikki Haley, when she was at the UN. We've got a great team of folks who've been advocating for Israel. But for those of you here, many of you are advocates, I can hear by your response, but I would encourage everybody, if I remember nothing else today, remember this: find a way to go to Israel. If you haven't been there, it is transformational. I happen to be the son of a Baptist minister, so for me, it was not just politically transformational, it was from a religious standpoint, whereas Netanyahu used to tell me, you know, it's a local call to God when you're in Jerusalem. But it was really just phenomenal. But more important than that, we've gone multiple times. We actually were just in Hebron last summer. It is so important to see for yourself what you're not going to pick up from many in the media. And that is that you see in places like Hebron or Bethlehem, you'd be shocked to see Palestinians around areas that you just assume would be a part of Israel and be under Jewish control. You see in places like Samaria, where we went to a business and saw Jews and Arabs working together despite what you hear. I remember years ago, the first time when I was up in the Golan Heights looking out over Syria and realized at the time, if the Golan Heights wasn't under Israeli control, ISIS would be drinking out of the Sea of Galilee. And if you're a believer like me and you look at the Bible, you look at Genesis, where God said to Abraham, your descendants, and it wasn't Ishmael. Ishmael was blessed for sure, but it was Isaac who was given the land of Canaan, and it was very well spelled out there. So it's not just in political white papers, it's in black and white right in the Bible if you read it. So I think it's pretty clear. But that's the big picture. I want to talk some of the practical, particularly Congressman, why don't you talk us a little bit about, there's a lot of nuances with where Israel's at today and where it's headed, and maybe give us some insights on what you see in the horizon.
Well, I agree that Israel is our nation's greatest ally. We want Israel to be safe, secure, and free. It's a beacon of hope, prosperity, freedom in a very dark region of the world. And all of our decisions that we've seen over the course of the last few years, it's been night and day compared to what we were seeing with the last administration. And December of 2016, this is after Donald Trump gets elected president of the United States, the Obama administration ends up helping fast-track through the UN Security Council a resolution that, in my opinion, essentially seeks to ethnically cleanse Judea and Samaria and East Jerusalem of Jews. And where we should be exercising our veto right, what we should be acknowledging as a disputed territory, if you want to talk about a claim made by Israel and a claim that is made by others, and there's a dispute. What the Obama administration, on their way out the door, did was not only get that resolution passed through the UN Security Council, but John Kerry, if you remember, gave a 70-plus minute lecture that was targeting Israel, our nation's greatest ally, and in a way trying to reframe this debate as if Judea and Samaria and East Jerusalem is a legally occupied territory. And that's just not true. So our frame of reference as we approach this is understanding those fundamental truths. And as Governor Walker mentioned, the important decision to move the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, or recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, or signing the Taylor Force Act into law to ensure that U.S. tax dollars do not go to a Palestinian Authority while they are inciting violence and financially rewarding terror. Most recently, we saw an announcement from Secretary Pompeo from the State Department to reverse that administrative action out the door. And it's clearly a fact today that Donald Trump is our president, not Barack Obama, that Mike Pompeo is our Secretary of State, not John Kerry. Thank God. So as we move forward, we need to continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with our nation's greatest ally, understanding a reality that sitting across the table from us is not someone who is able to, first off, they're not even sitting down at the table, but if they were, they couldn't sign and deliver their people in good faith. And when we talk about the Palestinian Authority and Abbas, that's one dynamic of it, and PIJ and Hamas. And listen, it was in Hamas's charter that they were seeking to wipe Israel off. They call jihad an obligation. They say that a Palestinian who negotiates with an Israeli is not a real Palestinian. So when you're engaged in these negotiations, it's important to know who's on the other side. But one most important takeaway from that top level, and you're going to hear some great perspectives from the two great individuals to my left. The important thing going into this process is that the attitude of the administration and the attitude in Israel and with the prime minister is that if the Palestinians look at this 80-page document and they decide that they want to ask for something, well then let us know what it is. You're approaching this whole process with an open mind. We want peace, stability, prosperity for that entire region, and especially for Israel. But this administration is not approaching this closed-minded or narrow-minded. They understand reality, and there's an important message to those Palestinians. If you have a problem with anything you're reading, well, don't just try to throw cold water on all of it. It's time for you to articulate what you'd be willing to accept for peace.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Fleischer, you live this every day. We had the great joy of being together in Hebron and to see the final resting place where Abraham and Sarah, our patriarchs and matriarchs, are at. But you really live it. And I think a lot of people visiting, as I encourage you all to do, are kind of shocked when you go to a site like that to see what Hebron is like, to see what Bethlehem's like, to see what other parts of Israel are like. Give us some insights as to what it's like and what it should be going forward.
First thing, it's so great to be here at CPAC. It's so great to be with so many people that really appreciate Israel. And I agree with what you're saying, Governor. Come and visit it. Come and see it for yourself, especially the places that you may be afraid to go to, because the reason you're afraid is because somebody wants you to be afraid. Yes. We cannot be victims of terror. We got to go to those places that we love so much from the Bible. It's Bethlehem. It's Hebron. It's Judea. It's Jerusalem, of course. I also want to thank the folks at Chovevei Tzion. There's an organization here called Lovers of Zion, and they helped me come here today. President Trump, we've said a lot of great things. Congressman said a lot of great things about President Trump. One thing that has not been said is that the Trump administration left UNESCO. Yes. Leaving UNESCO. Now, the reason Nikki Haley stated this twice, that the United States left UNESCO, was because UNESCO decided that the Tomb of the Patriarchs and Matriarchs in Hebron is a Palestinian World Heritage Site, and that Israel was endangering it. Reversing that meant actually getting truth back on the table, Look, the people that live in Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank, the biblical heartland, are courageous. Sometimes they call us settlers. I used to not like that term. You know, actually, my wife has a cookbook called the Settlement Cookbook, right? It's not such a bad word. Let's settle down and don't settle for less. It's not such a bad word, but it's become to mean something bad. But the truth is, the word settler means courageous Jews who hold on to the heartland of Israel. And so I'm proud to have that term. And we're working on making it more touristic, more normal. Recently in Hebron, I had a bat mitzvah. My daughter reached the age of 12. Nice. And I reached out. My family, we love fireworks. We love fireworks, and we do fireworks at big events. And I reached out to some of the Jewish members of the community to see if they could fire off some fireworks for the bat mitzvah, for the celebration. No good. Bureaucracy, too much money. Army didn't like it. Security didn't like it. I didn't know what to do. I reached out to some of my Palestinian neighbors. They happen to fire off fireworks all the time. So I reached out to them. They were like, what? I said, can you fire off fireworks? They said, do you want us to buy you some fireworks? No. I want you to buy them and shoot them off of next to a building next to the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs so we could have it for my daughter's bat mitzvah. And you know what? They did. And they were so, not only did they honor me, but I honored them. Happens to be that that's right, it was an amazing thing. It was like 6 minutes of fireworks. It was unbelievable. It was just awesome. My daughter will never forget it. But those are different kinds of Arabs that don't want the Palestinian Authority, don't want the corruption, don't want the jihad. But they're a minority, and they live in tremendous fear from a thuggish organization that wants to suppress them. If you ask me what the map should look like, which is the name of this panel, what should Israel look like? I say one word: big. Yeah. All right? I say Israel should be big. A big Israel means more rights for more people. It means more defense for Israel, and it means access for all of you to come and visit.
Well, exactly. And another reason to go, I remember the first time I met with not only Netanyahu, but with Knesset members from opposing parties. And it's another great reminder, not just physically being there, but talking to folks. The Knesset's made not only of Jewish Israeli citizens, but of Arabs. It's a democracy in a land surrounded by countries that clearly are not. And it's often surprising to see not just synagogues, but not only Christian churches, but mosques, to show just the incredible freedom. What I loved the last time we were there, though, is you gave me a Make Hebron Great Again hat that I wore up atop of one of those homes overlooking the tomb. Pretty cool stuff. So not quite as great as Keep America Great Again, but pretty nice along the way. So thank you. Ms. Glick, you've got an incredible perspective because born in the United States, immigrated to Israel, been a journalist, an author, a columnist. You've got a wide perspective. When you immigrated, you joined the Israeli Defense Services, and so you understand from many different levels, and you've written extensively about this. Give us your feedback on not only what Israel looks like today, but what it should be going forward.
Well, thanks so much, Governor. You know, it's funny, Yishai and I both live in the same town of Efrat, which is where King David is from. So it's true that, you know, when my children learned the story of Ruth, the Moabite, who came to Israel, and she was David's great-grandmother, they're right in their neighborhood. This is where it happened. And this is really what we're talking about when we're talking about Jews coming back and rebuilding the Jewish Commonwealth after 2,000 years of exile. So when you're talking about Judea and Samaria, you really are talking about our birthright. This is what has maintained the Jewish people throughout so many generations, 50 generations of being chased from country to country and barely surviving. So I think it's really extraordinary, Israel today, what our children have the ability to experience. It's something that Jews really just haven't had that capacity for 2,000 years, so it's extraordinary. And, you know, regarding that, also when I was in the Army, I was a member of the Israeli negotiating team with the Palestinians. We were doing all of this craziness, trying to figure out a way to share a land with a terrorist organization that wants to take everything that we've accomplished and destroy it. So it was sort of a very, you know, I learned a lot professionally during this period, but it was also very stressful because the people we were meeting with were actually going out and planning terrorist attacks right after they left the negotiating room. So they were sitting, they were breaking bread with us, they were our good friends and sparring partners in negotiating deals, and then they were breaching them. So, you know, that's very important. One of the things that the negotiations ignored were Israel's rights, because how can you base negotiations with a terrorist organization that wants to annihilate you on rights? If you do that, then they won't talk to you. So Israel put our rights on the side, and I think it's very important when we talk about the map of Israel to go back to those, because next month we're going to be celebrating the centennial of the San Remo Convention, which was the convention that the Allied powers after World War I had, where they were dividing up Turkey's colonial possessions in the Ottoman Empire. And one of the main areas was the mandate for the land of Israel, the mandate of Palestine. And under international law, when a colonial territory gains independence, the borders of the independent state are the borders of the mandate, of the colony. And so this is called uti possidetis juris. And that's the legal norm. So the minute that Israel's borders were determined in 1920 in the San Remo Convention, what we had in 1948 was a country that was supposed to have those borders. Those borders include Judea and Samaria. So we know that those are the lawful borders of Israel. It's just that, and we never gave them up. And we never revoked our legitimate rights to our borders under international law. So I think when we're talking about the map of Israel, we have to start with that map. Now, one of the main things that's so important about the Trump plan and about the Trump presidency, really, is that he's decided that American Middle East policy has to be based on reality and not on propaganda. Because for the past, exactly, last round of applause for President Trump. We love Trump. I love Trump. Because it's so important, you know, for all of these years we've been saying, look, you have to look at the reality on the ground. You have to see what's going on here. And so the Trump plan says, at the outset, Israel has these rights. Israel is not an occupier. What Secretary Pompeo said that was so important was that he threw out that insanity and really that evil declaration that the Obama administration put out that they supported in the UN Security Council, that Israel has no rights to areas that are legitimate, that are ours under international law. So we are an illegal occupier. It was such a hateful message and so wrong. And it was about empowering America's enemies and harming America's chief ally in the Middle East because, in a way, it delegitimizes American power in the Middle East. If America's closest ally in the Middle East is illegitimate, what does that say about the United States? And so President Trump said, that is nonsense, right? And Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said, the Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria are absolutely lawful under international law, and we're basing American policy on that. That's the revolution that Trump has brought to the Middle East. That American policy is about reality. And so here I just want to say they're having a mapping committee now, and they're trying to figure out what Israel should do. And the concept is that Trump wants to reserve areas in Judea and Samaria for a future Palestinian state. They have 4 years to figure out if they want one or not. And so the areas that Israel definitely is never going to part with, we're going to apply our law to administer them under Israeli law. That includes all of the Jewish communities. That includes the Jordan Valley. It's not all the land that, you know, we probably need, but be that as it may, the Palestinians have 4 years to figure out if they want a state. Well, they've had 100 years. They haven't wanted one. They've wanted ours. This is probably not going to happen. But we have to realize that this is phase one. This is not final borders that the mapping committee is trying to figure out. This is something that we're just doing for now, and we shouldn't look at it as something permanent because it's important. And the last thing I want to say about the Trump plan is that the reason why it's so important is because for a generation, the Americans have made their Middle East policy about being bad to their allies and good to their enemies. And guess what? Then more people want to be America's enemies and fewer people want to be America's allies. Why would you want to be on the losing side? That's destabilized the region because it empowered people who thought, well, we're not going to pay a price for our aggression. So the Trump plan said, no, that's not true. The bad guys aren't going to be rewarded for their badness. The good guys are going to be rewarded for their goodness. It's very important. It's great for Israel, and it's fantastic for America. God bless all of you for your support for Israel, and God bless President Trump. Thank you.
Great. Well, we got a couple minutes left. We're getting some more insights. So appropriately, each of the panelists, myself, acknowledge the president being phenomenal when it comes to support for Israel, which others have claimed he's actually delivered on, which I think is important more than just for Israel. I think it's important when you think about all the politicians, the panel excluded, that have come to Washington and promised things and didn't deliver on them. This president does over and over and over again. So that's really important to acknowledge and remember. But in addition to praising the president, the likely, and things are still up, I think Biden probably wins in South Carolina. I think things will shake out for a little while longer, but I predicted and still believe that Bernie Sanders will be the nominee, despite his devotion to communist dictators and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics in the past, and in Cuba and Nicaragua. This guy, on this particular issue, has come out and said that AIPAC is too extreme, that somehow Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, is racist or out of control. This guy is out of touch, not only as it compares to conservatives, but I think what traditionally even had been more Democrat foreign policy. Where do you see things headed, not only with the presidential race, but when it impacts this? Where do you see it with your fellow members of Congress?
And I'll tell you my perspective. When I first came to Congress, I was both the highest-ranking Jewish Republican and the lowest-ranking Jewish Republican. We've since doubled our numbers. David Kustoff of Tennessee is now here. Any help electing more? We are still a few short of a minion. But, with regards to Bernie Sanders, I mean, the fact that he is harder on Bibi Netanyahu than he is on Fidel Castro,
yes,
and he's going to be the standard bearer. And his delegates may be setting the DNC party platform. And like what we saw in 2008 and 12 and 16, and the efforts were unsuccessful to insert pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli language, this time it may be successful. And what is his cabinet going to look like? His highest profile backers in the House are Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Ocasio-Cortez. So listen, everything is at stake. This is real. He's on the verge of getting his party's nomination. You're at CPAC in 2020 with everything at stake that you love about your country, your freedoms, your liberties, your Constitution, and there are veterans who are here. This room's filled with patriots. Everything that you love, not just about making America stronger, but strengthening relationships with friends, knowing who our friends are. It's about all of you in this room leaving here and ensuring that we keep America and that we have the right people running this great country.
So we've got about less than 2 minutes left from each of you. I want a quick response. So it's like a rapid round. But what do you think are the biggest obstacles for a growing and healthy Israel in relation to the United States and just in general? And we'll just go right down the line.
I don't think we have any obstacles. I think we're on the way. I think that our economy is healthy. I think that the only obstacle is that the Arab countries around us have got to wake up to the fact that the 100-year war is over. It's a waste of time. You're not going to beat us. We're going to be there. Allah's with us. God is with us. And he's going to keep the Jews strong. And there's an opportunity for our Arab cousins to wake up and have that region blossom and prosper. Israel has about 4.5 million tourists a year. The Louvre Museum, the Louvre in Paris, has about 11 million. Yeah. So we need more tourism. We need more life, more love. And that's going to come through a regional peace. And I think that the Trump plan is a step in the right direction. Just one thing I want to tell you is I'm taking a page from American law. Route 66 in America, yeah, right? Yeah. It's a historic road. We're going to make that on the Route 60, which is the biblical highway from Beersheba to Hebron, to Bethlehem, to Jerusalem, to Bethel, to Shiloh, to Shechem, is going to be the biblical heritage highway, and it's going to be a great zone for all of you to come and visit.
You know, it's so exciting to me. It's so exciting to me to be here, to see how incredible the support we have from the American people here in this room. And I want to tell you, I think you guys are, the conservative movement in the United States is really the most important movement also for the Jewish state, and I dare say for the Jewish community here in the United States. We know that if Bernie Sanders comes in, he's trying to marginalize AIPAC, he's trying to marginalize American Jews and their right to speak on behalf of the issues that concern the community. I'm very concerned about that, and I think that your friendship is extraordinary. It's extraordinary for the Jewish people, it's extraordinary for the Jewish state, and we just value you so much, and I know that together our strength, our friendship and our alliance will just grow stronger over the years. So again, God bless you for everything that you do. Thank you.
Well, thanks to an extraordinary panel, and I will leave all of you here with a charge. So you just heard some exciting comments from our panelists. One of the things I mentioned at the onset was we're so thrilled to have so many young conservatives here amongst us. I would challenge every one of you to go back into your communities, into your states, into your jurisdictions, and share the message that the contrast with socialism is freedom. Talk about it from the heart. As conservatives, we talk and talk and think with our head. The left talks and thinks with their heart. We need to think with our head and talk with our heart. It's not just economic freedom, it's freedom for security here in America and around the world. And one of the most important things to do that is to have a strong Israel and a strong relationship with Israel. Share that with young people as much as you can. God bless you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We are coming together at a crucial time in our nation's history. America is making great strides towards freedom and liberty, but she also confronts determined foes and faces enormous challenges. Challenges that strike directly at the core principles that all of us here hold so dear: free enterprise,